We are now joined by Denny Hamlin, driver of the number 11 FedEx Freight Toyota. When we open up for questions. Dustin, then Mike.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. I got a couple things for you. One, I want to just check off. Bubba tweeted this week about the hoop group. So is he back in? Is everything in good graces in regards to that?
I noticed he left his hat, so it's in our lost and found. So he'll have to come back and get it. I actually tweeted a picture of it, but the tweet didn't go through. That was a shame. But yeah, he's left his hat, so there's evidence of him being there.
And secondly, this week there's we've had the practice again on the Roval. Something it was a new concept, new idea. People are now talking more about running on dirt and all these different ideas. Is there getting to be a point where these ideas are getting to be are we getting on the ridiculous side of ideas, or is it that this sport needs more bold ideas like that? Are we starting to go too far on ideas, or are we not is the sport not going far enough, I should say?
No, I think that new venues always add excitement. I mean, that's what really, in my opinion, boomed the popularity in the 2000s was going to these new racetracks. Kentucky was awesome for the first time, and then it's just kind of it fizzled out, and it's still the same old Kentucky that it's always been. I think that there are really some great racetracks. If you want to talk about road courses, there's amazing tracks just north of the border in Canada that are awesome. Montreal and tracks that are made for road course racing. The Roval's a little bit different of a beast because I don't know how much architect went into coming up with passing zones and the lay of the land and how blind it is in some corners, and obviously we know that attrition will be at a maximum in that type of race, but you just have to be on the good side of it. So it's certainly a wild card race, and maybe that's what the fans want. If it is, then we will do that every week. But I definitely like the idea of going to new venues because there's always a level of excitement when you go somewhere. Sonoma, we've all learned how to drive it. It's for the forever that we've been there, and so it's just kind of it's stale in the sense of from a driver's aspect. There's not much else we can work on. We know every little corner and crack of the racetrack. But when we go somewhere new, you really see a wide spread of guys that figure it out early, and then guys that struggle.
Mike, go ahead.
Mike Embry, USA Today. You've won 3 races here, but we've had a guy like Truex who's led a ton of laps and can't close it. Is this track more sensitive to having your car really right at the end, those last 50 laps, or is there another explanation for that?
No, it is. It definitely goes through a transition, especially late. I feel like the last 100 laps changes quite a bit at this racetrack, so you have to adjust for it. But in the few instances I can think of with Truex, he's been fairly unlucky to not have won yet so far. But eventually that turns around.
Does the sticky stuff change that at all or not?
It does. I mean, it wears out. I think if anything, that makes it more sensitive to changing throughout the day. So I think that yes, there's more keeping up to do, more maintenance you need to do to your car to be good the entire day.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. For those of you that have 3 wins here, you, Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, and Ryan Newman, any advantage here?
Old news.
Being a 3, because it does. It changes the
Everything's
VH1?
different. Yeah, it's so
VJ1?
much different. The cars are different, surface is different, things like that. But certainly when you come to these racetracks, for us personally, it feels like this is a track that we certainly can win at, and I've got a great feel for it, no matter where we're running or what cars that we're running. So yeah, certainly from my aspect, there's not an advantage, but there's certainly a level of comfort when you come here. You know exactly what you're looking for.
7 races remaining in the regular season, and 7 drivers are locked in with wins. But of the kind of championship level group who have not won yet, it's you and Kurt Busch and Jimmy Johnson and Casey Kane and Brad Keselowski and Ryan Newman. So not really desperation at this point, but For a large number of people in that group, it's just get it done. I mean, how much can you do this weekend to make that happen?
Well, we're going to certainly try. I mean, I've gone through this last month has been probably one of the toughest in my 14 years. It's just been really bad results. Not that we've necessarily run bad or had bad speed, but just terrible results. But, you know, luckily for us, they're letting 16 guys in, not 10. So, you know, it's you can kind of be mediocre and still kind of make it into the playoffs. So our job is to get good right now. We need to start winning right now, running the top 5, lead more laps, and get to work on this season and try to make sure that, you know, we put ourselves in contention at the end. We know still that, you know, it doesn't matter how many points, you know, those other guys accrue. If we can win at Texas, Phoenix, or Homestead, or Texas, Phoenix, or Martinsville, we're part of the championship 4 and could easily knock one of those guys out and all the hard work that they put in throughout the entire year.
Go to the front, then go to Lewis.
Bob Stegmeyer, Full Throttle Magazine out of New York. You had mentioned about the last 50 laps and the sticky stuff. Is there any way to approach it towards the end of the race that you have a feel for it, that you know you're confident with the sticky stuff and you're not going to lose it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wears off no matter what. There's not much you can do to keep it on the racetrack for a longer period of time. Eventually, you know, every lap that gets worn on it, it goes away, just a minuscule amount, but it goes away. And I noticed, you know, at the end of last race, yeah, it's still there, but it's not much advantage. So you have to make sure your car handles out of it just as much as you do on it. So we're going to need to move around. You can't just rely on the grip that the racetrack is giving you for speed. You have to have speed outside of those 2 black streaks.
Over here. Dan Lewis, Frank Reuters. You come here once a year instead of twice. So what's the difference in preparation? And when is Little Big Burger opening?
We hope right around 1st of September. But, you know, coming here just once, it really doesn't change a whole lot from my standpoint, other than we typically are better in the second half of the season when we go back to racetracks twice. Us personally in our 11 team are always better the second time around. So you just got to get it now versus in the playoffs. But in exchange, they put Richmond in the playoffs. So it's kind of a wash, I think, for us. So, you know, you don't approach it any different. You still go off the notes from your very last race. You know, I think that you rely more on notes from the last time you raced here versus this race 1 year ago. So, you know, we seem to be pretty fast off the truck right from the get-go, and we'll build on that and hopefully qualify well.
Doug Rice, Performance Racing Network. Danny, a lot of talk, as you know, about the big 3 this year. Your teammate Kyle Busch, obviously Truex and Harvick. Is that distance, is that reality, or is that just our perception because these teams have gone out and won multiple races? And if there is a gap, how big is it?
Well, I think it's, you know, there's a gap there for sure, and it is reality that, you know, they've been the 3 fastest cars. As long as it's not a, you know, weird kind of intricate track that really doesn't apply to others, they typically are the 3 fastest cars in open racetrack and head-to-head. They all do a great job of keeping their track position. You never really see any of them having to go to the back for any reason, so they execute extremely well, and that really sets them apart. They have, you know, I think a little bit more speed than the next guy, and then they have a lot better execution than the next guy, and that really makes for better results. So I think that's the area we need to work on the most within our team is first qualifying, you know, getting to qualify, and then once we get to qualify, keeping our starting spot. You know, we haven't done that in over a month, so that's been a huge problem for us. Always having to go to the back pretty much every race for some reason or another, and when you do that, you have to do something different with your pit strategy. And when you do something different, you get caught with a caution on pit road. So it's a snowball effect that if you don't have everything right in line and you're executing perfectly right from the first practice, it can snowball into a bad weekend. And that kind of is what happened to us last weekend. And that's the things that we need to clean up if we're going to be part of this thing later in the season.
Terry here, then Mike.
Terrell Covey with Portsmouth Herald. Denny, I'm curious, kind of dovetailing off of that, for guys who had strong careers such as yourself, how sick are you of hearing Big Three and Young Guns? And there's a bunch of you guys who are, have done pretty good in your own right.
Yeah, but I don't think we've been at that level to even be talked about at this point. I think we've, got to get better in a lot of different aspects, and so I don't mind it personally. I mean, it's agitating knowing that we're capable of doing that if we just put everything together. But until we do it, they deserve all the press that they've gotten.
Speaking of the possibility of going to new places, the Circuit of the Americas in Austin has gotten praise from a lot of corners. Can you imagine a scenario where you guys would race there and at Texas Motor Speedway?
I'd love to, but honestly, none of this is ever going to happen. Not until all these tracks and NASCAR get together and are willing to make changes. So, they have contracts that no track is going to give up tens of millions of dollars every time that race cars show up at the racetrack. So, it's going to have to take a bold change. It's going to have to take someone way high up saying we're making changes and this is what we're going to do for it to happen. But it definitely won't happen in the next few years until that contract's over with.
Lee in the back.
Have you been involved in any of the committees that make those decisions? I mean, I know that there's a driver's council and the RTA and et cetera, but do they pull, people at the same time and discuss what needs to be done or what can be done to enhance the sport?
I would forward you to my Dale Jr. download.
Well, I mean, for those of us that don't have an hour to kill,
Yeah.
Can you just give us the Reader's Digest?
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of those conversations, separate from the Drivers' Council, and we have great conversations, and NASCAR does a good job of involving us in a lot of things, but, they see things from way high elevation, so they can see the bigger picture more so than, what drivers can. And, we hear from the fans probably more so than NASCAR does because it's direct fan interaction. So they rely on our feedback for that, but they see the bigger picture and what's best for them. And I think I think without these long-term track contracts, they probably would like to go other places and get cities maybe involved in bidding for the races there, because certainly it adds economic benefits to those cities when we're in town. So, but that's something that will be changed hopefully in the future. But right now you're kind of just you're handcuffed with what we have. But I think that NASCAR and especially ISC is doing a great job of upfitting their facilities at a handful of racetracks, and to me that's the #1 priority that we have to work on. I would say is ISC is doing a good job of making sure their facilities are up to par.
How would you describe the current leadership of NASCAR?
I think it's okay. I think that it's as good as it's been. I know that I've been in some meetings with Ben Kennedy quite a bit, and he's definitely excited about his role, and he's very involved with gathering information, and he's obviously kind of going to be the next guy, I guess, in line, and that's a good thing. He's a racer, he understands things, and looking forward to really working with him for a long time.
Bob over here.
Bob Pockers, ESPN. Now that you've had several races where tracks have applied this PJ1, are you guys used to it at all? And do you worry less about it and just like, okay, wherever it is, and we'll just figure out whether it works on Sunday or not?
Yeah, I thought overall it made restarts and things like that better at this particular racetrack. I'd like to openly petition for we need PJ1 at the top of Turn 3 at Pocono. When we had that new fresh asphalt up there, it completely changed the racing at Pocono, and I really believe that it could do wonders for that racetrack. And because it's been such a single file racetrack ever since the repave, that there's a handful of tracks that really could help the racing. And so putting it in the high side of 1, high side of 3 at Pocono would be a fantastic idea. I know that Texas, it's a big challenge because we run fast there anyway, but that track is so wide. I mean, just put a strip way up there where you never think we'll go, and eventually someone will go up there, and they'll keep testing it, and next thing you know, we're going to have 2 wide racing. So, you know, these tracks that are really 1-lane based, it could really do wonders, and I like, you know, really like the direction that the tracks in NASCAR have gone on it, applying it, and they've done a good job of being more consistent with where they put it from year to year.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
You know, I don't know if, I guess it'll work at Indy, but certainly would love to see it tried. I mean, Indy's a great candidate. Now, are you going to get people from Indy to buy, you know, take the risk with their surface? You know, they're a little finicky about that kind of stuff.
Any other questions? Thank you, Denny.
Thanks.
Good luck this
Appreciate it.
weekend.